Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today I'm going to do a little bit of a progress update for Project Pulchra, which is a game that I'm working on. I already made a video about this, and I've made two announcements over on OptiWorld showing some of the progress off. And the reason I want to make another video highlighting this is because this is actually making me pretty happy, and I'm really enjoying the project so far, and we actually have garnered a pretty good amount of interest in it, which kind of took me by surprise because obviously this is a pretty big venture. It's a pretty big move. It's, a lot of moving parts all together. And overall, man, it's just something that I've been dedicating a lot of time to, and it's a pretty big passion project of mine. So I definitely want to talk about it at least a little bit. So before I get really into this video, I want to go ahead and say thank you guys so much for all of the support so far when it comes to the game. The reception of this has been very overwhelmingly positive. People have been very excited for the project. They think that it looks really cool, and they're really hopeful and excited for what's to come. And that's really helped me out a lot because honestly, this is something that I didn't know how it was going to go over. When it comes to something like video game design, this is a completely new territory for me. It's something that I haven't explored too much before. Now, one thing some of you may know is that I actually attended 1 year of schooling for computer programming and game development. So I have at least a little bit of experience when it comes to stuff like this, but it's always been kind of a dream of mine. Another little personal tidbit about me that you may not have known. Before YouTube, one of my dream careers that I had was to be a developer at Rockstar Games and work on some of my favorite video game series. So in a way, this is like me chasing one of those childhood dreams to make video games. And honestly, man, I think that's really what it's all about. I don't really care how much copies I sell of this game. I don't care if I even make money. I've pretty much come to terms with the fact that this is probably going to be a financial sinkhole for me where I just dump thousands of dollars into this project. And I probably won't recoup my losses, especially since the game is going to be pretty cheaply priced compared to most video games at a price of around $4 to $7. But it's still something that I want to do, so I'm gonna do it. And I guess in this video I have a lot of updates to bring you guys when it comes to the game, and there's a lot of actually great news when it comes to this. So if you haven't read update number 2 over on OptiWorld, there was a lot of updates in it. There's currently about 600 people who've read it in the first day or so. So I kind of wanted to make a video updating you guys on the project because there's a massive amount of improvements that have already been made to the game in the few days since I've made my last video and update talking about the game. So first I want to explain to you guys the phases of development that we have. And the reason I say we, I'll explain here in a second, but when I first started working on this project, I created a couple of phases of development that have a bunch of different goals that I'd like to accomplish at different points in time, right? And phase 1 is where everything started out. Now, just some of the basic rundown of phase 1, what needed to be done in order to get the game, I guess, ready to move forward to phase 2. I had to create the full map of Pulchra, aka I had to create all of the different regions that the player can go into and interact with different things and do things in, and I had to basically create them all by hand. I actually handcrafted every single region in this game by myself. Every tree, every flower, every rock, every stump, every enemy, all the paths, the shorelines. I designed all of this by hand. It took me multiple days to do, and overall it probably took me about 15 to 20 hours. I've been working on this game as literally a full-time project. So I basically have 2 full-time jobs, actually really 3 full-time jobs right now. I'm working on YouTube full-time, I'm working on my merchandise line full-time, and now I'm working on a video game full-time. So I've been dedicating a load of time, and a lot of that went to creating the map. Now, the next step was to connect all of the regions to allow fluid movement from location to location. That is done. This didn't take as long as I thought it was going to. That was kind of one of the big problems I thought phase 1 would get stretched out by, but I was able to complete this in less than a day, which is pretty great, which means now you can visit every single region in the game that's playable, and you can move basically by following the paths to the edge of the world. I implemented some of the basic enemies in the starter locations. I added animals and wildlife to the game that you'll be able to hunt, and I added some of the initial NPCs. Now, this is all subject to change, but most of the mechanics are pretty much also in place. So the big mechanics that are in place, the combat, which is actually built directly into the RPG Maker engine itself. Didn't have to do a whole lot with that yet, at least. The combat's pretty well set up. The wildlife / hunting has been began and is in a pretty playable state, which means you can go around and hunt animals and whatnot, get meat from them, things like that. The farming mechanic was one of the more tedious and tough things to put together, but it's in a very playable state right now. I'm extremely happy with it. In fact, it's actually more developed than I initially planned for it to be in phase 1. There's more of it worked on and completed than anticipated. It's almost to a point now where even before the game is fully playable, you can basically play the farming and just play that. I've actually spent a couple hours of time just kind of playing around and fooling around with the farming mechanic, which you're going to see in the gameplay a few times probably. And while it's not fully complete, it's at least in a place where you can do something with it, which is pretty great. I've also started and not completed, but got to a pretty good point, at least on one of these, but I started the basic business investment system. So essentially there's shops and businesses all around the map that once you get to a specific point in the game's quest lines, you can actually personally invest your gold into these businesses, and there's multiple branched outcomes of what could happen. So just like the farming system, there's different outcomes, and there's basically the opportunity for you to invest your money and hit the jackpot and make a whole bunch of money back. You can invest your money and, you know, get some measly returns, get something to go with it, you know. Nothing crazy, but just a little something. You can have worse than anticipated performance, and you can have absolutely disastrous performances. So for instance, in the Hortus General Store, which is one of the first towns that the player is probably going to interact with, at a certain point after completing enough community missions, you actually end up speaking to Shopkeeper Smith, and you can invest 10,000 gold to try to save the Hortus General Store. And that's basically where it's at right now, but eventually this will be branched out to where if you don't invest in the business, or the business performs poorly even after your investment, it actually gets bought out by a massive, basically super conglomerate business called Basic Co. So I guess, in a way, your choices and the things that you do in the game can actually have a pretty major impact on the world that you play in. Just like in the farming system, like I said, there's also a similar system. So what happens is you can have a range of different crop performances that affect your bottom line. So you can have a fantastic harvest and you can make a load of gold from that. You can have, you know, average ones, slightly below expectations, a little bit above, absolute disasters, and these will affect your outcomes. But at the same time, while you're farming and you're doing your own thing, they actually have their own crop performances as well, meaning that the farm next door to you one year, or one harvest I should say, could have a fantastic harvest and make way more money than you, or maybe the next harvest they have a disaster while you have a really good harvest and you end up beating them financially. Now right now, what I'm working on and what will be a big priority in phase 2 of development is expanding upon these basics, expanding upon these mechanics to provide even more immersion and more things to do. For instance, with the farming system, I want to implement a system to where if you consistently are doing better than your rivals, they actually might go out of business. I don't know how I'm going to implement that yet, but I'm still working on kind of prototyping that and figuring it out. But this is a pretty basic progress update. There's a little bit more that I could get into, but honestly, it probably wouldn't make for a very entertaining video or something you'd really want to hear about. So if you want more updates on Project Pulchra, continue to follow me here on my YouTube channel, or alternatively, you can get all of the updates first over on OptiWorld, where on my blog I've been keeping a pretty consistent track of the things that are happening in the game development. So I want to answer a few questions to kind of end this video off. Number one, how much will the game cost? This is a very common question, and repeatedly I've said $4 to $7, and I think that's where the price range is going to stay regardless. And the second question, when will this game be out? I have absolutely no idea. For all I know, I could work on this for another 2 to 3 years before it comes out. It may be 6 months. I have no idea. Right now, the scope of the game is actually quite large, especially for a first-time project, so I anticipate that it's probably going to take longer. But right now, we're actually slightly ahead of time when it comes to development. And, oh yeah, I forgot to include this. The reason I've been saying we, I actually have another developer who's going to be helping me on the project starting in phase 2 of development. They're going to kind of help expand upon some of these systems, like the fishing system, for example, is going to be completely overhauled and reworked to make it a little bit more skill-based and fun. But other than that, I don't really have any more updates for now. July 25th is when we're officially entering phase 2 of development, which could last a few months. And then from there, I'll give you more updates as time goes on. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, well, updating you on my game and signing out.